Representative Rob Andrews, Democrat from New Jersey, the 1st Congressional District. Congressman Andrews, welcome back to the program. Happy New Year, by the way.
Good morning, Tim, and Happy New Year to you and your listeners.
We have a couple of things. I would like, if you wouldn't mind, I wanted to get to this because I'm guessing, although I don't know for sure, and that's why I'm asking, that there has been some consultation with members of the Armed Services Committee on this newly configured Defense Department and how we're going to move forward. The money part of it's not coming out today, but at least the change in strategy. Have there been conversations about this?
Yes, the White House has been conversing with the leadership of the relevant committees, and I think we have a pretty good idea what's happening.
Okay, and that it's going to be laid out today, but, I mean, do you have a sense of where the money is going to be coming from and how it's going to be cut and what the priorities are?
Yeah, I do, and to answer that question, you need some context here.
Sure.
First of all, you obviously are going to not be spending as much in Iraq and Afghanistan as we have. We've been last fiscal year, we spent $130 billion in those two places. Eventually, that's going to wind down almost nothing. So you start with that. But then you look at the core defense budget, everything else, and it increased from 2001 to 2010 by 40% in real dollar terms. But we have the same number of ships, the same number of planes, and the same number of people in uniform, which we call end strength. So you got to look at that and say, what's going on here? And the answer, I think, falls into three areas. The first is explosive increases in procurement costs for weapons systems. The GAO looked at this a few years ago and said that we spent nearly $300 billion in cost overruns on 15 or 16 weapon systems that were also about 2.5 years late. So you're going to see a lot of emphasis on getting bang for our buck, but not paying $1.50 for it. The second thing you're going to see is some reconsideration of our forward basing around the world. The administration, I think, foreshadowed this with their discussion of the new base in Australia for the Marine Corps, which would take the place of some of the other Asian positioning that we see that's frankly more expensive but not more valuable. And the third thing that I think you're going to see is some reconsideration of the kind of weaponry we're buying. Thank goodness we're not going to be likely fighting a ground war in the plains of Europe against the Russians. It's not certain, but it's pretty improbable. But a lot of our weaponry is really pitched in that direction. So those three categories, procurement, forward basing, and the kind of weapons that we're procuring, I think are going to be the focus of this strategy.
All right. We will look forward to hearing that today. And I know that you had worked on one of those special committees to talk about defense acquisition and so on, and that would give you some idea of the kinds of things they're trying to deal with. What is this year going to shape up like? And specifically, I'm talking about the first few weeks. The House and the Senate will return. And once you do, you very quickly will have to undertake to write the legislation that will incorporate an extension of the payroll tax holiday, one assumes, for the rest of at least this year. How is this going to play out, do you think?
Well, it should start playing out now. I find it kind of incredible that the Republicans who were claiming that their obstinance was due to insisting on a year-long extension aren't here in Washington doing something about it. They don't intend to come back until January 17th. As far as I can tell, a lot of the country, even that had time off for the winter holidays, went back to work on Tuesday. And they're not here. The Democrats are here. We're having a leadership meeting today, and we're ready to negotiate this. I don't think we should do more brinksmanship here.
Well, Senate's coming back the 23rd, right? They're even later.
I think that's right. And I don't think that we should be starting this negotiation February 1st. Look, there's a pretty simple issue here. Everybody says they want to extend this middle-class tax cut for a full year. That would cost about $100 billion. Everybody says they want to offset that. Okay, so where do we find the $100 billion? It's not mysterious as to what the question is. We just start to sit and talk about it. The president has talked about, and I support him on this, a very slight increase, surtax, on the second $1 million of income and up from the wealthiest Americans. That's our proposal. What's theirs?
Well, their proposal was to cut, correct? To cut spending.
Well, yeah, let's talk about what their proposal was. It was to cut unemployment benefits, dramatically cut unemployment benefits for people. This is at a time when there are 4 people who are unemployed for every job opening there is. Another of their proposals was to force premium increases on more Medicare recipients. If that's what they mean by spending cuts, we're not for that.
Part of this proposal, and again, we're speaking with Representative Rob Andrews, a Democrat from New Jersey in the 1st Congressional District. The part of this legislation that was moved forward to give a little more time for negotiation included a provision that the president readdress the Keystone XL pipeline, not necessarily to approve or disapprove, but he has to at least look at it again. And he's being pulled in two different directions, one by unions who say this is going to hurt them. If he doesn't approve this, it's not going to give them the jobs they need. And there are environmentalists who say this is a bad idea because it has a lot of potential for disaster, environmental disaster. I'm not sure where he comes down on this. Where do you come down on it?
Here's what I would do. If we could get the owners of the pipeline to agree to give the United States a right of first refusal for the product that comes out of that pipeline. In other words, if we want to buy it, we have first dibs on it at world market prices.
Instead of selling it to the Chinese.
Yeah, if they'd be willing to do that, and it complies with the ordinary environmental standards, I'd be for it. But I'm not for building a pipeline through the middle of the United States so it makes it easier for the Chinese to import oil. So I think that's a very crucial question that ought to be addressed.
So you're not concerned so much about the environmental or the union issue. It's more about whether or not the money is or the oil is we're just being used as a way to make the Chinese have more cheap oil available.
I think this pipeline can be done safely and environmentally sound. But why should we take that risk? Why should we do that if it's going to benefit the Chinese? The only rationale for doing this that makes sense to me, if it's environmentally sound, the only rationale would be to increase domestic oil supply for the United States. So if we don't have this right of first refusal to buy the product, I don't see why we should do this.
One more question. There's clearly a more feisty president in evidence yesterday when he was saying that he was going to appoint Richard Cordray regardless of what the Senate did because he says, I can make a recess appointment, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is the kind of, some Democrats are saying this is the kind of president we wanted to see in the first place. On the other hand, there are those who are saying this is just going to further antagonize any relationship that he has with the House and Senate. And what can he do for the rest of this year if he maintains that relationship or that sort of that confrontational approach?
How do you further antagonize a relationship with people who doubt whether you were born in the United States when you produce your birth certificate? I mean,
well, do you say that that's the opinion of the Republican mainstream?
No, but it's widely held among some Republican voters, and I don't see a whole lot of Republicans.
Well, I'd like you to quantify that accusation, widely held among a lot of Republican voters.
Look at the polling. There's a Harris poll done about 18 months ago that said a majority of Republicans...
That's before they produced the birth certificate, though.
Go to